Hey everyone, Fluffy the Kami here, and this is going to be a samurai guide to help you understand the job. This is my first guide, so any help is obviously much appreciated, and if you have any extra tips, don't hesitate to drop your own ideas. First, we'll briefly go over all samurai skills just so you can get a general rundown of what they do, in case you didn't know them 100% already. Looking at most of your GCD abilities, you have 3 sets of combos, all with varying functions that lead to different activations and buffs for your rotation. Each combo starts with Hakaze and leads off to its own branch. You have the Gecko combo, which includes Shimpu, a second parter which provides a 13% damage up buff, and Gecko, a high potency combo ender that unlocks Getsu, the sun on your job gauge. We'll get to all of the gauge features in a moment, but just keep this in mind for now. You have the Kasha combo, which includes Shifu, a 13% haste buff, and Kasha, another high potency combo ender that unlocks the Kasen. And finally, you have the Yukikaze combo. It's a 2-part combo that goes immediately from Hakaze into Yukikaze, unlocking the Setsusen. Yukikaze used to be your slashing debuff in Stormblood that gave your 10% damage for you and your slashing comrades, but now it's just had its potency increase and its Kenki gain increase from 10 to 15, making it a very interesting tool for manipulating Kenki and Sen, topics she'll go into later. You also have AoE combos that provide Kenki and Sen, and its Shadowbringers are better than ever, no longer held back by TP and AoE fall-off damage. You'll start off your combos with Fuga, and you'll have the ability to branch off into 2 AoE enders, Mangetsu and Oka. Mangetsu is essentially like your Gecko. It unlocks the Getsu Sen on your gauge, but it's in AoE form. The same with Oka. It unlocks the Kasen on your gauge like Kasha, but it's in AoE form. Generally, I don't recommend using these for anything less than 3 targets, as with 2 targets unless there are more efficient methods of handling them. As for your last batch of GCD abilities, you have your Iaijutsu, powerful casted weapon skills only available when you have a certain amount of Sen unlocked. Luckily, as he keeps it simple and you don't have to memorize what each Sen does, you just need to know how many Sen you have to know which Iaijutsu you have available. If you have 1 Sen, you have access to Higambana, a high potency dot that lasts a huge 60 seconds. At 2 Sen, you have the access to Tenkakoken. This is your strong AoE on the GCD, and with Shadowbringers, the skill no longer has fall off, making it a seriously potent ability. At 3 Sen, you unlock the Weaponskill, which probably got you interested in the job in the first place, Madare Setsugeka. A combination on disruption of all 3 Sens, you get a ridiculously high potency single target attack with a flashy animation. Now let's get into your abilities. Most of your abilities on Samurai have something to do with Kenki manipulation, and I think just to keep things simple right now, I'll explain the abilities and get into handling Kenki itself later on. But to have a concept for now, Kenki is the right katana gauge on your UI, and at level 62, every GCD except the Iaijutsu generates some number of Kenki for you. With that in mind, let's get into your 2 most straightforward Kenki spenders. You have Hisatsu Shinten, a 320 potency single target ability, and Hisatsu Kyuten, a 150 potency AoE ability, both costing 25 gauge. I'm sure you can see the relationship between these 2 skills. They're your immediate options to single target and AoE damage. Use Shinten when you have 2 targets, and use Kyuten when you have 3 or more targets. Simple business. You also have 1 skill that has a bit more complicated of an application in Hisatsu Seigen. This move is special because you can only use this after you've gained an open eye proc when using Third Eye before receiving any source of damage. It's 220 potency and costs 15 Kenki. The point of the skill is a bit complicated, but basically it is more Kenki efficient than Shinten. However, that doesn't mean you should spam it on cooldown whenever you can, and we'll explain why later on, but basically this is just a minor damage gain if you want to think about it like that. Next you have Hisatsu Guren and Hisatsu Sene. These are your 2 big boy Kenki abilities with the highest cost at 50 gauge on a 2-minute CD. Their usage is basically the same effect as Shinten and Kyuten like we just discussed. However, Sene is an 1100 potency single target attack and Guren is an 850 potency line AoE attack. Those are some disgustingly big numbers, but do understand that these 2 abilities do share cooldown. Guren is a gain on 2 targets compared to Sene, unlike Shinten and Kyuten at 3 targets. In fact, Guren is such a massive gain over Sene, breaking 1700 potency on 2 targets versus Sene's 1100 potency on 1 target. It's always important to check in certain fights where you can get more usage out of Guren without losing a cast of either in a fight if you can. This will be very important when optimizing Samurai, as there aren't many obvious gains like this one. Finally, for your Kenki abilities, you have Hisatsu Kaiten. This beefy skill is probably trap bait for a lot of new players. The point of the skill is to buff the next weapon skill you use by 50%. So some new players may think to use this on things like Gecko and Kasha. This doesn't work because Gecko and Kasha are only 470 potency, and half of 470 potency is 235. While a 700 potency GCD sounds nice, for 5 extra Kenki you can get a 320 potency ability that's not even on the GCD called Shinsen, meaning you really lose out. So what exactly can you use Kaiten on? Well, you specifically really only use it on the Iaijutsu, as those are your most potent abilities from base. Higanbana is 880 potency base, Madara is 800 potency base, and Tenkagoken is only 360 potency base, which he uses in AoE situations anyway, making it an easy contender for Kaiten. So the golden rule is use Kaiten specifically on Iaijutsu abilities only. Oh, and I almost forgot, you have 2 moves that are related to movement that also spend Kenki. You have the Gap Closer, Hisatsu Gyoten, and the Backstep, Hisatsu Yaten. They both cost 10 Kenki, and Yaten has the added effect of increasing the potency of NP, your only ranged attack, on the GCD to 320 potency. The skills themselves also have 100 potency. They aren't really DPS gains in a full uptime situation, so likely you don't have to spend these on cooldown. They are strictly for movement. Gyoten is always good when you need to rush to the boss from a long distance, however sometimes I try to restrict my usage of Yaten if I can, but it can help you pull off some flashy stuff and help you save the last GCD just in time to dodge an AoE. That enhanced NP glowing on your hotbar might entice you to press it, but do understand that NP will cancel your combo and you want to avoid that at all costs. If it doesn't cancel your combo however, you are free to use it as you see fit. Really, you'd only NP mid combo if you were losing a lot of GCDs from not being able to hit the boss anyway, which can but rarely happens. Now let's get into the rest of your non-Kenki abilities, and we can start with the most important one right off the bat. Meikyo Shisui is an ability on a 60-second CD, and it allows you to use any 3 weapon skills in your kit without combo restrictions for 15 seconds. This ability is extremely powerful, and it is key to having your bursts lined up and focused consistently. It is a very flexible ability, and understanding how to use this is key to maximizing your damage on samurai. You cannot think about this ability in a linear way, as you will just keep yourself confused mid-fight when you press it. I can give some rough guidelines on how to use this ability, but it really is one of those moves where you kinda have to adjust to whatever situation you're in at the time. First things first, you generally don't want to use Meikyo while you're mid-combo. If you just use Hakaze, you may be able to make a case that you wanted to rush your combo ember to get something out before it died, but if you have just used the second tier of your combo, you may as well just wait, as you're already at the end of your combo. In a single target situation, your goal is generally to get to Madara as fast as possible, so you want to be using this on your combo enders to build 3 Sens. If you have 2 Sen already, you only need to use the combo ender that correlates to the last Sen and rip your Madara. And then you have 2 Sen after that from the rest of your weapon skills that Meikyo allows you to get. If you have 1 Sen going into Meikyo, then you get the 2 you need, you rip your Madara, and collect your last Sen. Some rules with this is that when you are getting the Sen you need after you've already used your Madara, you want to use only Gecko or Kasha, since they take the longest to reach, being 3-tier combos. If you have only 1 Sen to collect after your Madara, make sure you use the combo ender which correlates with the buff you have the most of. For example, if Shifu is closer to falling off than Jinpu, you'll want to use Kasha so you can use the Gecko combo to naturally refresh Jinpu, and of course this worked vice versa. Keep in mind that with Meikyo being 15 seconds long, you can fit a lot of things in there. Iaijutsu don't count on Meikyo, which is why you can use Madara without losing your cast. We haven't talked about Tsubame Geishi yet, but basically we'll be using 2 Madaras in Meikyo most of the time, as Meikyo and Tsubame Geishi have the same cooldown. If it's not in Meikyo, it'll be right after. Tsubame Geishi basically copies whatever Iaijutsu you executed and allows you to execute it again, albeit on a 60-second cooldown. Depending on what opener you use, there will be times where you'll also be using Higanbana and Meikyo as well, so you'll be getting a whopping 3 Iaijutsu in 1 Meikyo window. So if you were wondering why Meikyo is 15 seconds for 3 GCDs, that is why. Do understand that both Meikyo Shisui and Tsubame Geishi are very susceptible to drifting. Drifting is basically when an ability that you'd like to use on cooldown isn't always possible to be used every time it is up, or it is not optimal to use it when it is immediately back up, meaning it's always 1, 2, 3, and so on seconds pushed back after each usage. This is why you must be flexible when working with Meikyo. It won't always be in the same place, and unfortunately sometimes it won't even line up with raid buffs anymore. It may not even get to line up with Tsubame Geishi. You have to be flexible to adjust with this, and the job gives you all the tools to handle that, just use them. But those are some rough outlines of what you'll be dealing with when it comes to Meikyo. I've heard there are some strategies to use MP to push back your GCD, keeping your Meikyo lined up in an optimal way. However, I'm no expert on this as I personally don't do it. But if you were to go into the Balance Discord, which I'll go ahead and leave a link to in the description, they'll happily explain it to you how you can capitalize on this. That was a pretty meaty explanation for one ability, but let's move on to things that are a bit more simple. 3 abilities that I want to talk about now are Ikki Shoten, Meditate, and Shoha. Ikki Shoten is very simple. It gives you 50 Kenki when you press it, and it has a 60-second cooldown. Not too much to it. Meditate isn't complicated, but has a bit more to it. Meditate is a channel ability on a 60-second cooldown that generates 10 Kenki every 3 seconds for 15 seconds, leading to a 50 Kenki overall. It also has the added bonus of generating Meditate stacks. Every stack to a maximum of 5 gives you access to the ability Shoha. The more stacks you have, the more potency you get, capping out at 500 potency. Meditate will only be used during downtime for the most part, so you really won't get to see the sick animation of Shoha very often, but Shoha is a great tool for keeping up damage when a boss has been away or out of your reach briefly. Ikki Shoten, however, is always available, and I highly recommend you keep this always on cooldown. Now, there are some situations, like in Titania EX, where you find that you have enough downtime to get a full Meditate in and max potency Shoha, but Ikki Shoten is coming up very soon, perhaps anywhere from 5 to 10 seconds depending on how good your group DPS is. I've had a lot of debate about this in my head, but what I eventually came to was this. In the situation I found that Ikki Shoten was up in 5 seconds, I waited for Ikki Shoten as I had the time to still get max Meditate duration in. However, in the event that Ikki Shoten was more than 5 seconds or at worst 10 seconds, I went ahead and just started meditating immediately and delayed the Ikki Shoten by about 5 seconds anyway. It's important to get all your meditation stacks in, as Shoha kinda sucks at anything but max stacks anyway. As the potency jump from 4th to 5th stack, it's 200 potency at the base, which is huge. The way I think about it is this. With Ikki Shoten, you can always Ikki Shoten, and you can always generate gates, so it's not the end of the world if it's a little bit off. Alright, I believe we've talked about every ability at this point that matters. Let's talk about Kenki management. We've already covered a lot of concepts actually. The concept of Ikki Shoten and Meditate have already been discussed for the most part, but basically to go over Ikki Shoten, you want to use this ability as soon as it's available. However, you don't want to spend all the gauge immediately as soon as it's free to use. The best that you can do for your gauge is to expend as much possible under raid buffs. So if you have a ninja, you want to be watching for trick attack. If you don't have triggers, a good way to keep up with trick and other 60-second multiple cooldowns is to watch things like Sene, Meikyo, Ikki Shoten, and Tsubame Geishi. Either way, it's important to line up as much of your Kenki abilities, especially Sene, under raid buffs. Another general rule, though this can be broken at times, is to never use your Shinten or Q10 if you're below 35 Kenki. This is really just so that if you need to use an EI Jutsu right after your combo ender, you have enough Kenki left over to Kaiten that EI Jutsu. On the concepts of Seigen, this ability is slightly more Kenki efficient than Shinten. However, this is not something I would spam as much as possible, and sometimes I don't even bother going for it a lot. Mainly due to complacency, but that's besides the point. I'd say the best way to use Seigen is when you're in a raid buff window and you don't have enough Kenki for one more Shinten, but the window is ending. Since Seigen has a lower cost, you can dump your gauge while still making it be a gain. The reason why you don't really want to spam Seigen as much as possible is just because Shinten benefits from more buffs and crit. You'll simply get bigger numbers off of it compared to Seigen, which is only very slightly technically stronger than a Shinten. Maybe there's some other ideas, but that's been my experience with Seigen usage. And then one last bit. If you're ever ending a fight and you just happen to have 10 or 15 gauge with no Seigen proc, and you know this is the very last GCD, you may as well just spend it on Gyoten to empty your gauge out. It's not really necessary, but it's better than nothing. Overall, there are some things to note about this dummy parts. All this is my rotation on the dummy. Things might not only change in certain fights, but you may also find that certain things don't line up for you like they did for me. That's because Samurai is very touchy with skill speed. Now, I'm sure there's a much more optimal skill speed tier, and that's something I like to mess with on a dummy to really make things smooth, but right now with the gear we have and all these Materia 6s I have melded instead of Materia 8s, I prefer I just wait on Savage until I find out what I think is right. The particular opener I got was from the balance. I think the opener is just fine, however, you can really do whatever opener you want, honestly. Not anything, but I mean, there are other openers that you could consider. Like if you find that you want to put up a Higambana after putting up Jinpu and after a Kasha combo, you honestly could and just make yo from there. It's not awful, however, your second Madari may just miss some raid buffs. The reason why I considered this is because in Titania EX in the opener, if you use the normal opener, it's pretty risky to get the Gecko after Higambana in your opener. And this way, you might just get all your EIG2 out a lot faster, but personally I haven't tried it and it may lead to nothing now that I'm actually thinking about it, but it could help with the Higambana timings down the line, who knows. It's more just food for thought and not really advice. Another thing with this opener that I'm thinking about is that if I were just to hold the pop at maybe 2 GCDs, I'd be able to get the third Madari under the pot. Not too sure how worth, and again, I haven't really tried it, but, you know, more food for thought. Initially, I gave Samurai a bad rep on one of my previous videos before I played because it seemed hopelessly mindless and boring. I felt like all I would be doing was Madaring, and with the loss of Hakakure and the addition of Iki Shoten, I thought Samurai had lost all of its big-brained optimization. So you're probably wondering why I decided to level it before any other melee, since I'm a melee main and I praise ninja so much. Well, it came down to a lot, but I'll narrow it down to a few things. I didn't really like where Monk was going in terms of its entire design philosophy. I even would say it regressed in terms of its evolution, so I avoided it entirely. I wanted to level Ninja, but its issues with right-on clipping admittedly scared me off. As of this video, I'm leveling Ninja, however, and outside of right-on, it seems like clipping animations have been severely reduced or something, which is really cool. So I can't wait to talk to you all about Ninja. The last reason, however, was because Samurai genuinely looked strong enough to be worth leveling, and it seemed like the most sturdy looking melee design-wise. So I decided to take a shot at it. So many of the changes turned out to be so fascinating to me. The changes to making Samurai a job that revolves around the 60-second window not only made it a burstier job, but just more fun to optimize. I love that they got rid of all the fall off on the AoEs and the ridiculous TP costs. It makes the job so much smoother and more satisfying, especially in dungeons, which was a total blast. The buff to Gurren and then Gurren getting a single target sibling with even more potency automatically just made me love the job so much more. Even though Sene rarely ever crits, because that's my luck, it still feels very satisfying to use. One thing I wasn't expecting was how much I'd actually really like Iki Shoten. The fact that you get Kenki and keep your sons is fantastic and keeps the job rolling. Also, I know I mean the whole more Madare, Unga Bunga stuff, but it's really satisfying with how often you get to use Madare, or when you get one Madare and do another one immediately after. I really do enjoy it. I've heard some people complain about things like Tsubame and Meikyo Drift making the job clunky, but honestly it's not that bad. I would definitely not call the whole job clunky for it, and I personally think it's fun working with skill speed in your rotation to keep that from happening. Anyway, I think Sam is beautiful and I look forward to working with it. Currently it's not a bad job as of week 2 in Shadowbringers. It's better than Ninja and I don't have to play Monk, so I'm glad I leveled it first. Thank you guys for watching. If you have any tips or corrections, please do not hesitate to drop them down in the comments section. I'm not the crazy samurai out there, and I'm not some crazy mathematician, but I feel like I've taken the time to really fill out this job, and I'd like to share what I know of the job. If you have any questions, I'm also willing to help. Well, anyway, if you liked the video, go Shinten spam that like button, and if you dislike the video, I hope nothing but your Hakaze's ever crit. Subscribe for more, and thanks for watching.